Hey there, Sagittarius. How you doing? It's been a while, right? So this is your forecast the next 2 weeks. Now, I don't know if you're a Sagittarius sun, like me, or whether you've got Sagittarius rising or ascendant, but either way, this is quite a helpful 2 week forecast taking you from the full moon in Libra on the 13th of April right the way through to the new moon in Taurus on the 27th of April. Now, this is a waning moon forecast because the full moon is where it's all like full and bright and illuminated, and we're going straight the way down to the new moon where the moon appears to disappear. So what I'm going to do in this short, not so short, but what I'm going to do in this video is pace you through the planetary movements of this time and an explanation of what they might mean to you and how you might choose to use those energies to best live your life with as much freedom and choice as you can. Now, one of the things with this 2 week period is I actually think we're coming to the end of a massive kind of area of resistance that we've all been going through since December. So I think, our journey into 2025, I think it's actually about to get started finally as we're midway through April. Can you believe it? And I'll tell you why in a second, but it's been really quite a strong set of influences. And there is the mother of all T-squares going on in this whole 2 week period, which are, I think, drawing you to a close of massive resistance that you've held against yourself. So I see this 2 week period as being a time when you're going to come into greater liberty by understanding your patterns much more clearly so that you can get moving. So I'm very, very excited. Now, if you're new to this channel, hi, my name's Louisa Tanner Munson, and I guess Feel Good Astrology. I've been going under that name for almost a decade now. And for me, Feel Good Astrology is to not be fatalistic with astrology. There's loads of astrology out there, loads of astrology books that are very fatalistic and that says, if you see this, this is definitely going to happen. Now, I choose to see this slightly differently. I choose to see that there's planetary weather that we are subject to, but we still have the choice as to how we are going to interact with it. Are we going to let it take us down, or are we going to see it coming and, I don't know, do something with our energy? So I practice astrology in such a way that we can find freedom, choice, possibility, and always see the next move coming. So hopefully that will be helpful to you. Now, if you've been here before, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me again. I'm glad you've chosen to listen in. So let's get cracking. So what I'm going to do is bring up my trusty slides, and I'm going to pace you through it. Now, first of all, I'd like to just start by explaining the sort of energies for these next 2 weeks. So we're starting at the full moon on the 13th. So the moon is full, and the moon really shows us our psyche and our emotions. And so we are full of emotions, and everything is very visible at this time, so we can't hide from ourselves. We see, if people are being a bit manipulative, we can really see it. Everything that is emotional is highly visible, highly understood. And it can feel quite chaotic and quite fast around this time. It feels like everything's coming at you really almost indiscriminately. But actually, I always think the full moon is really showing us what we've been wishing for. Like, where has our intent, our intention, our way of being, what has that been creating? What has that been sowing the seeds for? So I really see that, the full moon is a time of, be careful what you've been sowing out there. Be careful what you wish for, because it all seems to come in thick and fast. Now, after that period, we're into this waning phase. And in the first week of it, up until the third quarter, we're very conscious in what is too much and what we need to let go of. And so we're in a time of conscious discernment. We're letting go of things. We're like, okay, that was too much. I didn't enjoy that. Goodbye. So we might be managing somebody out of our life. We might be discussing how we want to interact with people. We might realize we've taken on too many responsibilities, and we'll be shifting that appropriately. But then when we get to the third quarter, halfway through this waning phase, we're going into the dark. We're going into the mystery. We're going into the unconscious realm of thinking and feeling and sensing. And so things aren't so apparent. And so we are letting go of things instinctively. We are tuning in. It's a time of intuition, and it's a time when we're really blind. As we come up to the new moon, we really can't see. There's nothing that's really obvious. We are really sensing things in the dark. And of course, during this time, this is the perfect time to completely clear the ground, because it represents the beginning of a new start, a new moon phase. And if you've prepared the ground right, it's a great time to pop in some new seeds, some new thoughts about what you'd like to manifest for yourself. So yeah, I really recommend over the next 2 weeks to be in an active, discerning kind of activity, and then get more and more intuitive, more quiet, more private. Take some time for yourself and really tune in to what's working for you and what's not. Now, if we look at this from the perspective of a diary, we get another view. So I find this very helpful because I actually have a diary in my mind, so when someone says, hey, do you want to go out next Friday? I have this like box in my head and I kind of tick it, so I don't know how it works for you. And obviously we're all different. We perceive things differently. But, on the Sundays, so we've got Sunday, the 13th, the full moon in Libra. And then 2 weeks later, sure as anything, we've got the new moon in Taurus on the 27th. Now, the midpoint, the third quarter, is happening on the 21st. And you can see in this first week, there's a lot that I've shaded in, that I'm talking about. And then in the second, there's only a couple of things that look big. Now, it just so happens that these two are really big energies and are really describing the T-square, the very tense situation. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second on the charts. But what I want to say in this first week is I feel like we're getting back into a sense of possibility, positivity, and into our flow. And here's the reason why. Before the full moon in Libra, Venus goes direct again. Now, let's just pace back a little bit, because this reading is going to take us back into the end of last year. So on the 6th of December last year, Mars went retrograde. 6 degrees in the sign of Leo, and he took his time, because he always does when he goes retrograde. He took a while to go back, and during that time Mercury was also retrograde, and so like when we're in a retrograde position, and I'm talking about these personal planets, so when we're talking about planets astrologically, we talk about the outer planets. That's Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And then we talk about the personal planets, the inner planets, that's the sun and the moon, neither of which go retrograde. But we've got Mercury about our thoughts and feelings and beliefs, Venus about our flow, our well-being, our relationships, our ability to relate to others, and then Mars, our ability to stand strong and defend ourselves and take action. And these are very personal, so when one of these is internalized with the retrograde action, we can feel really, really off. Now, they don't normally all appear at the same time, but it just so happens that from December last year, right the way through to the 13th of April, every day, apart from 6 days, at the end of February and the beginning of March, we've either had one or two of these planets retrograde. And so it's almost like none of us have been really able to fully step forwards into our power and to really, really feel what we know to be true. So, Mars going retrograde. And for some people, it's a lot stronger in their charts than others. If you've got a really strong Aries or Scorpio vibe, or a Libra vibe in particular, or a Sagittarius vibe like you do with the Mercury, Mercury, the reason I say that, with the Sagittarius, like Mercury started his retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius and then in Pisces just recently. And, neither of those signs are very positive for Mercury. So, we've all been really, really run through the mill here. And so what's about to happen with Venus going direct again from the 13th of April, it feels like our actions are coming back online, our thinking is coming back, and we're able to relate to things again. So it's like we've been taken offline to mull things over, and we've been held back, but now we are ready to move forwards with a bit more certainty, because we've really had time to think things through. So this is good. So, Yeah, we've got the full moon, and the full moon has got massive flavors going on. But, we are starting to really know how to understand ourselves and understand our needs. Now, at the same time, Saturn goes into an exact conjunction with the North Node. Now, the Saturn North Node conjunction takes a while to kind of fade in and fade out. But this exactness on the on the 14th of April, to me is indicating that all our loose ends, anywhere where we're not really responsible for our purpose in life and for moving forwards in a very sort of practical way, things are going to catch up with us. So it's really important that you make that commitment to yourself. And then as we go through this week, I think things are starting to ramp up. So for instance, Mercury goes into Aries. That's fantastic, because the last retrograde that Mercury did, he started in Aries, went into Pisces, but when he goes back into Aries again, I think we're starting to move forwards. It's almost like our brain just clicks into gear a little bit, and our thoughts will be a lot more concise, a lot more incisive as well. It's interesting, we've got the same sounds. We'll be a lot more direct. We won't be vacillating so much with our thinking. We'll be a lot more switched on and really tuned into what turns us on. On the 17th, we've got a lovely conjunction between Mercury and Neptune. It's the first one that these two get together in the sign of Aries, really showing that we can really think creatively and take action on it. That's also mirrored on Saturday when Mars makes a trine to Neptune. So there's Mars taking action, Mercury thinking, and Neptune really giving us something creative to move forwards on. So if you're a creative or a business owner, or wanting to get into your own business, or needing to resolve something in your life and really ready to take a plunge and be quite courageous, these times are really starting to help us. In between times, on Friday the 18th, Mars moves into Leo, again like Mercury. Mars was in Leo when he went retrograde. Now, he's been going direct since the end of February, but he's still in that sign, Cancer, where he was really going into that full retrograde. Now he's going into Leo. It feels like the Mars energy is stepping forwards a bit. He's still going to be known as being in the retrograde shadow until the 2nd of May. But the fact is, Mars is coming online. Our vitality, our sense of wellness, our sense of energy, our sense of playfulness, and being able to actively play, being able to actively create. This is all getting maximized. It feels like the wheels of creation are turning again and spinning, and to me that's really great. The next day, on Saturday the 19th, I've already mentioned that Mars is going to trine with Neptune, but the Sun goes into Taurus, so it's like one planet change, 2 planets, 3 planetary changes in 4 days. I love that. That's really going to pick up speed for us. The last day in this first week of this waning period, we've got Venus going into conjunction with the North Node. And I really feel like we are really tuned in to what our heart is desiring, whatever our purpose in life appears to be. We're really heart-centered on it. And the 3 sextiles are like building blocks. And so 3 beautiful sextiles, I think, involving Uranus. There is this sense of innovation and a sense of freedom and a sense of moving things forward. So it's a really, really great energy. And then we're coming up to this sort of intenser time, as we're going into the darker side of this waning period. And it starts with the Sun in a square to Mars. And this is a very frustrating energy, where it feels like we can't quite get our levels of effort right. We might be wanting to put too much effort in or not quite enough. Like we're moving, but it's slightly jarring, and we can come across as a little bit aggressive or assertive. So you might find that people are really gruff around the 21st. And then on the 23rd, the Sun makes a square to Pluto. Now, when you see this in the charts in a second, you'll see that actually Mars and Pluto are in opposition to each other, and the Sun's in the middle making a great big triangle. You really see that all the way through this forecast, in fact. But this Sun square Pluto is showing where our control mechanisms are really jarring for our own personal development and growth. And then on the 25th, this is kind of sobering, but helpful. I think it's powerful. Venus making her last conjunction with Saturn. in this particular round. And to me, it feels like we can commit to something long term. We can really make a decision, a cool, calm decision to connect and relate differently to people. But, this Sun square Mars, Sun square Pluto, and Mars and Pluto in opposition at the time of the new moon in Taurus is very, very intense. So what I'm going to do is bring up the charts. But just now, I just want to just take a moment to thank the people that support this channel. So you might be one of the people that's supporting the channel, and if so, thank you so very much. You might be somebody who supported the channel in the past, right now, or maybe you're planning on supporting the channel in the future. I adore you. I really, really appreciate you, however you're choosing to do it, and there are many ways. Thank you so much. Some of you might be members of my new membership. Some of you might just be buying me a coffee, and there's a link below. But thank you. I appreciate you. Without you, this channel would be very different. So anyway, let's move on. So these are the three charts that I'm looking at. And as I quickly whiz back, so one of them you can see is the new moon in Taurus chart, and you've got the sun and the moon here, which is what happens at the time of the new moon. The sun and the moon come together. If we go backwards, the moon is in that quarter. This is the third quarter. The moon is in a conjunction with Pluto, and then back to the very first position, that's the full moon. That's the one we're experiencing on the 13th. So the moon is moving from here in this 2 weeks to here, to here. Obviously, it's one continuous movement. But you see in this first chart, we've got this what's known as a T-square. So you've got Mars and Pluto in an opposition. They're coming into that opposition. It's not exact on the 13th. It's exact on the 27th, though. So they're in an opposition, and they're both in a square, a 90-degree angle to the sun. Now, actually, at the time of the full moon, they're also in they're in a very tight square with Chiron as well. The sun and Chiron are in a conjunction on that day, very tight one, and that can bring up a few ouchy feelings, where we can feel quite vulnerable, quite exposed, especially with the full moon, like illuminating all of our patterns, putting loads of light onto the matter, and really kind of it almost feels like the awareness of our problems, or the awareness of what we're raw about, just feels like too much. Thankfully, this isn't occurring in too much of a troubling part of your chart. I say yours, it's ours, it's mine as well. My son's in the sign of Sagittarius, but this is a part of your chart about your creativity and what you've born so far. Like, what have you birthed? Is it your children you're feeling vulnerable about? Is it your projects, your creativity that you're feeling a little bit sore or vulnerable about, or open and exposed about? Is it are you doing enough with your creativity or not enough? Do you feel exposed that you should be doing more and you just can't quite manage it? Could it be your sort of your sexual relationships? This sort of intimacy really shows up here as well. But there's a feeling of rawness about what might bring you joy and happiness, and so that's an interesting one with the full moon in Libra, because the full moon in this position is really emphasizing friendships and networks, almost as if everyone that might be related to you somehow can see what's going on with you, and how much joy you have or don't have, or maybe you have too much joy and you're being judged for it. But it can feel really quite difficult. You might find that everyone's encouraging you to co-create with them, and yet really you're feeling quite vulnerable, but really wanting to do your creation your way, in your own time, and not wanting to share it. So there is a real sort of imbalance going on. And then with Pluto here, really emphasizing deep changes and controls coming from your local environment, and maybe some of your local friends, or maybe what you think the local narrative is expecting. So for instance, if you're living in a place where the listening for people is that you're really kind of this way oriented in terms of politics or religion, or in terms of wealth or how you earn your wealth, or like family status, if you're feeling like the odd one out, but still wanting to express yourself, this is going to be really at odds. And then Mars here is really wanting, right now he's in the 8th house. So he's bringing up a feeling of wanting to get out of the bad feelings, getting out of any feelings of embarrassment or shame. But as these planets continue moving and adapting over this next couple of weeks, you'll see that Mars moves into the 9th house. And so then there is also this feeling of freedom, like you want to escape. It's like, how can I get out of this oppressive feeling? How can I feel free to be myself, to enjoy life in the way that I really know I can enjoy myself? How can I find some freedom from this? And particularly around the 21st, the moon and Pluto are in a conjunction. So the moon is really emphasizing, this T square once again. The moon and Pluto together can really show you just how far people will go to have their own way. Now, is that you having your own way within the community you live in? Or is this your community? Like, how far will they go to make sure that you toe the line? This can really show a deep rift, in how comfortable you are with your surroundings. Like, do you feel like you belong where you're currently living and currently experiencing your life? Or do you feel like to belong, you need to do a lot of deep transformation and change? Of course, that's going to bring up a lot of stress. Now, this is one thing I want to encourage, actually, for you to become conscious of, because this isn't the first Pluto and Mars opposition. This is the third and final one of a 3-part opposition. So the first one happened when Pluto was in Capricorn and Mars was in Cancer. That happened on the 3rd of November 2024. Then in January, Pluto was in Aquarius and Mars was sorry, I'm just thinking this out in my head. And Mars was in the sign of Leo. This last one is, with Pluto in Aquarius and Mars in Leo. Now, these oppositions come around every couple of years, but Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for the next 20 years. So what this means is each of these oppositions is going to be happening across this area here about belonging to your community and what you know and the narrative of the community and your friendships and how you kind of behave within your community. And it's very, very social. It's quite visible. And I really think that when it goes well in that part of your chart, you really do feel a great sense of belonging. And then Mars up here is your desire to go into the unknown, go into the big adventure, go somewhere much bigger than the context of where you belong, like really find yourself in a much more magnificent place. And so this is going to be an opposition that shows up again and again and again over the next 20 years. So we're going to have at least 9 of them, maybe 10. And so it's worth observing, how are you feeling in November? How are you feeling in January in terms of what you knew to be true and how you were trying to interact? What came up for you around the 3rd of January? Did you feel like you belonged? Were you really happy with your results? Whatever is coming up for you, in particular, right on the 27th, this is the pinnacle of that energy. After that, it's going to dissipate. Thank goodness. But it should instruct you. It should give you a clue as to how you might want to find freedom. This Mars up here is really wanting to find a much bigger context for you. So you might find learning, studying, teaching, sharing is going to be a real motif of this time and really helps you move through it. But anyway, on the 21st, the moon is really emphasizing it and just showing how far you'll notice your community goes to get you to toe the line, or how manipulated you feel by others around you to belong, and also how you'll manipulate yourself to feel like you belong. And of course, we learn those patterns in childhood, and when we go to school, we notice that, don't we? Because we might feel like we don't fit in. We might try to be a bit more normalized. I really think this part of the chart shows where we norm ourselves. And, it might not be appropriate to norm yourself now as an adult. You might actually be more comfortable to develop a way to feel comfortable being your actual self and not have to put on a mask. So this is going to be a really sort of like deep placement for you with Pluto in this part of your chart. So anyway, as we're coming to this last week, and remember, we are letting go of experiences, you know, the sun makes a square to Mars, you know, in terms of what mask we might be wearing. By this time, the sun is in the 6th house. It's really encouraging us to get back to work, to get a lot of things done. And yet, as much as we're wanting to get things done, there's this desire to get out in sort of galloping off into the future. And you've got your eye on a completely different prize, and you've got the tension of how to make that work. And then, you know, the sun in a square to Pluto, again, you're trying to get things done, and yet you're feeling like you're having to do things to make other people happy. And again, you can't quite get things done. So it's a hell of a bind to find yourself in. And then as we're coming up to the new moon and really clearing away, you'll definitely be finding things about this that you don't like, and they're definitely trying to thin your life out. But this new moon in Taurus, as it occurs, is really emphasizing how you organize your life. You know, what are your routines for health, diet, fitness, your routines for money, your routines for regulation, like every kind of regulation. And that doesn't sound very exciting or passionate, but actually, if you can get the regulation feeling good for yourself, it can actually support you to have these flipping great adventures. And it can actually support yourself to be yourself within your community and to feel strong. You know, like none of us feel that strong when our life is in chaos. And, you know, if we're going to be honest, we've had Uranus going through this part of our chart as well, completely turning all of our routines upside down and on their heads. You know, you've been through a lot of change in terms of how you live and manage your life. And so I really think this new moon in Taurus, as it shows up on the 27th, is here to show us a much better way of being in our whole life. Now, obviously, this is going to have a ramification onto our relationships and how we are in our loving relationships, our friendships, and our families. And it's also going to have a knock-on effect with how we do our career. And, you know, that leads me on to my last little bit, actually, which is to share with you that I do continue this forecast for my members. So if you're interested in knowing what happens next during this 2-week period, and in fact for the next 2-week period and the next one and the next one. So for instance, every fortnight on either the new moon or the full moon, I record a relationships and connections forecast for the sign of Sagittarius. And every fortnight on the new moon and the full moon, to accompany these public forecasts, I'll also record a career and ambition forecast for you, Sagittarius. Now, this is part of a membership package, which I host on school.com/feelgoodastrology. I charge $22 a month for this, and you also get a 1-week free trial, so you can give it a go and see if you like it. Now, you know, some people just leave it at stopping in for the 4 forecasts that they get every month, in addition to this free one that I do on YouTube. But, you know, if you're somebody who also wants to hang out with people who really like astrology, that might be learning astrology, that might be learning about themselves through astrology and opening up and sharing, then it's actually quite a cool place to come. You know, this is completely private. It's just between the members. I do one at least I say one community hangout each month. In this month, I've done 3, but I hang out with you guys. So I announce a date and then say, you know, if there's something you'd like to learn about or share or talk about, let me know. And that's what we talk about for the hour. If you've been considering buying a consultation with me or studying with me, then there's a 20% discount. I've also got a 50% discount on any webinars, and I'm starting my webinars in the next couple of weeks, and they're going to run right the way through the year. But also your membership supports my channel. So, you know, if this is of interest, then yeah, check it out. Just go over to school.com/feelgoodastrology. Like I say, you also get 4 extra forecasts that you don't get with this. And this is where I tell you what happens next. So anyway, I hope that was helpful to you, Sagittarius. And of course, I really wish that you have a great 2 weeks. I really think with this T-square and the grand square that really starts it all off, I really truly think we're facing ourselves in a way that we haven't really done. And it feels like whatever was going on and slowing us down really right the way through December, right through to now, this is all changing. Things are going to start to zoom fast forwards. And I, for one, am really super excited. So thanks for joining me so far. Have a great time and catch up with you in a reading real soon. Bye for now.